So we're 3 weeks through the NFL season, and some players have just been exceeding expectations, and some players with high expectations have been falling flat of those. So for today's video, after 3 games, I'm going to be giving you guys every NFL team's most disappointing players so far. I might do this a couple times this season, so it'll be really cool to look back on these and see if these players turned it around or this was just going to be a down year here in 2025. And like always, you can let me know what you agree with or disagree with for your favorite team that I bring up in this video, and maybe there was a disappointing player that I failed to mention. You can let me know that down below. I also have timestamps in the description as well if you wanted to hop to your favorite team within that division. So we're going to start off with the Miami Dolphins, one of the more disappointing teams this year. A lot of people did expect a fall off in some sort from this team. That definitely went all the way in on some top paid guys like Tyreek Hill, Bradley Chubb, Jalen Phillips, but none of those guys are my most disappointing players so far. It's unfortunately going to be Tua. As a fellow left-handed thrower, it is disappointing to see Tua and the other left-handed quarterback that we'll probably get to in a little bit have down years so far, and Tua is getting paid a lot of money just to be an average quarterback so far. Tua has a cap hit of $39 million this year, then it's $56.5 million, and now I'm seeing Dolphins fans talk about on Twitter they can't wait to get out of this contract after the 2026 season and just take a $50 million cap hit for the next 2 years. The Dolphins are 0-3 to start off this season, losing to Daniel Jones and the Indianapolis Colts, losing a close game to the New England Patriots, and then losing on primetime last Thursday to the Buffalo Bills. Tua did not look good against Indy. He looked all right against New England. He looked a little bit better against Buffalo, but you can really see that talent gap between the Bills and the Dolphins, and just that Tua that we saw throw for 4,600 yards in the 2023 season just looks like such a different player than what we're watching today. I get it though from Tua, right? Like, he's not going to be wanting to just absorb contact with all the head injuries he has. He's made some bad over the middle throws, and he hasn't really gotten that much help from his receivers in Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle at times. Mike McDaniel really likes to dial up the running back swing pass to Devon Achane, not really trusting Tua with the ball in his hands. So far, Tua this year in that 0-3 start, Tua has 5 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. He has a completion percentage of 69% so far, an 8% sack percentage as well, which is extremely high compared to the rest of the league. And he's averaging 6.5 yards per attempt. They're not trusting Tua with the deep ball whatsoever. You can probably list off a couple Miami Dolphins, but I had to go with the highest paid guy on the team in Tua. For the Buffalo Bills, there's not a lot of players to talk about. You could maybe bring up Keon Coleman's name. He had a monster second half against the Baltimore Ravens, but really hasn't done much since. But I'm going to talk about their veteran linebacker, Matt Milano. And it's a little bit of his play, but it's also a little bit of just him not being healthy. Once again, Matt Milano was an all-pro first-team member in the 2022 season. He played 15 games anchoring that defense for the Buffalo Bills, and has been there when a lot of turnovers happened on that Buffalo Bills defense. But then in 2023, 5 games, 2024, just 4 games, and he's already been hurt already this year. He missed their Thursday night game against the Miami Dolphins on short rest. He also hasn't been graded out well whatsoever so far this year. He's the 72nd ranked linebacker according to PFF, and has not done well at all in the run game. And I wonder if these injuries are piling up on Matt Milano, who's a very well-paid player by the Buffalo Bills. This is somebody with a $12 million cap hit, and I do wonder if this is maybe going to be the last year that Buffalo can really trust Matt Milano as a main guy, or is he just going to be injury prone throughout the rest of his career? He's still just 31 years old. We'll see if he has a couple years left in the tank. But Bills fans, you can let me know down below. I mean, they're off to as good of a start as you can get. For the New England Patriots, I'm not going to go with Drake May. I think he's actually shown some progression this year in his second full season. So I'm going to go with their wide receiver one, Stephon Diggs, somebody that was paid to be the guy over there in New England. And he's currently 4th in receiving yards so far. Guys like Hunter Henry, Kayshon Boutte, and Ramondre Stevenson all have more receiving yards through 3 games this year. And Stephon Diggs is in year 1 of a 3-year, $63 million contract he signed with the Patriots last offseason. And I have no idea if we're going to even see year 2 or year 3 of this contract right now, because the Patriots could just move on in the offseason if Diggs can't step up, given what he's going to be getting paid. He's got 15 targets throughout 3 games, 13 receptions, 112 yards, has not found the end zone yet either. He's averaging just 6.7 air yards per target, which is well below Kyle Williams and Kayshon Boutte over there in New England. So we'll see if the veteran receiver can turn it around coming off that ACL tear, because I feel like we've heard Stephon Diggs' name more in outside news related to the NFL than inside. For the Jets, I'm not going to go with Breece Hall or even Justin Fields, given what happened in week number 2. I'm not going to go with Michael Clemens, who's been one of the worst players on the defensive side of the ball this year, but I also didn't have high expectations for him going into this year. I'm going to talk about Will McDonald of the Jets, who had such a monster sophomore year last year that I feel like is having somewhat of a down year to start off year number 3. Last year, McDonald had 10.5 sacks throughout 17 games and 15 starts. He had 2 forced fumbles, 28 total tackles on the season, but the advanced numbers loved Will McDonald as a main breakout edge rusher in the 2025 season. But so far, though, that has not been the case. He's the 101st rated edge rusher according to PFF this year with a 49.5 defensive grade and 118 total snaps. He's got just a 10% quarterback pressure rate so far this year, which is well below some of the other players on the Jets like Quinnen Williams and even Jawan Briggs, who's done it in way less snaps for the Jets. He just has 3 tackles for a loss, 2 stops as well. Maybe he'll get going throughout the course of the year. I just thought maybe at this point he could have been like maybe a sneaky decoy candidate, but we're not at those conversations yet. The New York Giants, I'm just going to go with Russell Wilson. He's going to be officially benched by Brian Daboll, and Jackson Dart is going to start week number 4. So maybe that is it for Russell Wilson in a Giants uniform, and he's going to end his G-Man career with an 0-3 record. He has 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 778 yards because he had a ton of yards against the Cowboys in week number 2, where he threw for 450, 3 touchdowns as well. He loved the deep ball to Wan'Dale Robinson and Malik Neighbors, but also had a costly interception. He made some bad throws against the Kansas City Chiefs as well. That Malik Neighbors interception in the end zone. He also didn't really force feed Malik Neighbors at all, who you could make an argument has been a disappointing Giant so far, although he did have a monster week number 2. And yeah, there's no such thing as a bad 1-year deal, and that's what Russell Wilson is on. It's a 1-year deal worth $10.5 million guaranteed. There's some escalators if he played longer, which maybe is not going to happen anymore. I wonder if Jackson Dart got injured or wasn't playing well. Would they just go back to Russ, or would they go to Jameis Winston? Could they cut Russ? Could they trade Russ? I do wonder what's going to happen over the course of the year, but you just needed Russ to elevate the floor of the Giants, and we didn't see that whatsoever in the first 3 weeks because all 3 of those games could have been winnable for the Giants, but they didn't get good quarterback play out of the veteran. The Washington Commanders, we saw a good week number 1 from Jaden Daniels, but maybe a down week number 2, and everybody just wants to jump to the sophomore slump. Now, he was hurt in week number 3, so I'm not going to mention Jaden Daniels. It's just been one bad game against the Packers on Thursday night, week number 2. So I'm going to go Terry McLaurin, a wide receiver that held out throughout the end of the offseason. He wanted a new contract. He even requested a trade, and I was like, you know what? That's not going to happen. They're eventually going to get a deal done, and they did. And Terry McLaurin signed a 3-year, $97 million extension. He's got a $17 million cap hit this year, $18 million next year. They could potentially cut him in a year and a half. You hope that you don't even have to bring that up whatsoever. But 3 games so far, it hasn't been the best for Scary Terry. He's got 2 catches for 27 yards in week number 1 against the Giants, 5 catches for 48 yards on 9 targets in week number 2 against the Packers. He had 3 catches for 74 yards against the blowout win against the Raiders, where they scored 41 points. He did have a 56-yard catch in that game as well. And this is reminding me a little bit about Brandon Ayuk from last year, where you hold out so long, you don't really build up that chemistry in training camp with your quarterback, and it just takes time to get going. Terry just turned 30 years old. I'd like to see him step up a little bit more as a true wide receiver 1 in this league. Maybe you just got to go with Bill, though, because he was supposed to be the next Barry Sanders. I'm just kidding. I would love to know, Eagles fans, who you think's been the most disappointing player so far. The Eagles are 3-0 to start off the year, beating the Dallas Cowboys, beating the Chiefs, and beating the Rams in a comeback win in week number 3. So I wanted to bring up Jalen Hurts because I feel like Hurts has not been as aggressive as he should be in the first couple games of the season. That could come on the new offensive coordinator, Kevin Patullo, now with Kellen Moore in New Orleans. I could have also mentioned AJ Brown as well, but then if I'm going to mention AJ Brown, could that just come back on Jalen Hurts or the offensive coordinator for not getting AJ Brown the ball? Because when he finally got targeted in week number 3 against the Rams, he had a monster game. He had a touchdown, over 100 yards, and 6 catches. I'm going to go with somebody in the secondary, though. I'm going to go with Reed Blankenship. According to PFF, out of 76 safeties this year, he's graded out as number 75. And this was supposed to be somebody that can kind of maintain that secondary with a couple veterans leaving last offseason. They did draft Andrew Makuba in the 2nd round. They still have Quinion Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, a fairly young secondary. And it's crazy that Reed Blankenship is somewhat of a veteran now on this secondary unit at 26 years old. And the secondary has been torched a little bit. Yes, they faced some good offenses in the start of the season. The Cowboys with CeeDee Lamb in week number 1. It's still Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs in week number 2. And then the LA Rams with Devontae Adams and Puka, who had their way against the Eagles secondary in week number 3. So I want to see if this becomes a problem for the Eagles or if he just turns it around and it's just a gauntlet of a start to the season. Because when targeted, Reed Blankenship is allowing a 103 QBR. Cooper DeJean, Quinion Mitchell, and Adoree Jackson also haven't been great so far when targeted. So yeah, just keep an eye on that Eagles secondary because it's so young. Speaking of secondaries, I'm going to go with just a duo pick here over in Dallas. I'm going to talk about Deron Bland and Trayvon Diggs, guys that are getting paid a ton of money in that Cowboys secondary. We all know that Jerry Jones did not want to pay Micah Parsons the record level contract that he got from the Green Bay Packers, so they pivoted and gave Deron Bland a 4-year, $90 million contract before the season started. They also gave Trayvon Diggs a contract extension a few years ago, which was a 5-year, $97 million extension coming off his rookie contract, and this duo has been one of the worst cornerback duos in the league so far. Reddy Stewart in less snaps, Kyrie Elam have been better, but not by much over there in Dallas. Deron Bland is the 77th ranked corner according to PFF this year. Trayvon Diggs is 85th, even worse so far. Diggs is allowing a 158 QBR when targeted. Deron Bland is a little bit better at an 89. I mean, even Kyrie Elam has given up a ton of yardage this year. Malik Hooker as well. So maybe like the Eagles collective secondary unit, I'm going to go with the same here with the Dallas Cowboys, which was always a big worry going into this season. And that's why when they just lost Micah Parsons and they just lose another playmaker on the defensive side of the field, you can really see these holes get attacked. Let's go to a team that is now employing the highest paid defensive unit in the NFL, the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm going to go with Patrick Queen here as the most disappointing Steeler so far. You can maybe give a nod to DK Metcalf, Aaron Rodgers. While the offense has been stagnant, we've seen that in the past from this team as well. It's just the Tomlin way, and the way they can win games is on the defensive side of the ball, and they've given up a ton of yardage this year to Drake May and the Patriots, to Justin Fields and the Jets, and Sam Darnold and the Seattle Seahawks. TJ Watt and Cam Hayward have gotten better over the course of the year. Keanu Benton has been really bad on the defensive interior, and they have had guys banged up in the secondary, but I'm going to go with Patrick Queen, who's graded out as the 53rd linebacker out of 73 according to PFF this year. I'm not sure if he lost a step, but his pursuit is all over the place in all the wrong ways this season. He's not been good in coverage whatsoever, and he can't stop the run. Breece Hall, Kenneth Walker, even Ramondre Stevenson at times have had their way with the Steelers. They've just been kind of bailed out, especially in that Patriot game with turnovers. I guess I can give them a little bit of a benefit of the doubt just because Deshaun Elliott's been hurt, Joey Porter's been hurt, Darius Slay was banged up at one point, Alex Highsmith got hurt. They recently got back their first round pick, Derek Harmon, but Patrick Queen definitely needs to be better for the Steelers. Let's go to Patrick Queen's old team now, the Baltimore Ravens, and I'm going to go with somebody that's getting paid a ton of money, that's been one of the best corners in the league over the last few years, Marlon Humphrey for the Ravens. He's given up a 126 QBR when targeted this year. He's given up over 100 yards already and a touchdown as the primary defender. He's graded out as the 100th ranked corner according to PFF this year out of 102. So many better guys have been better in that secondary for Baltimore this year, like second-year corner Nate Wiggins. Chidobe Awuzie has been better. Obviously, they have great safety play with Malachi Starks, the rookie, and Kyle Hamilton, the veteran that just got extended. Jair Alexander also hasn't been great at times, in only one game though, for the Ravens. But yeah, Marlon Humphrey definitely needs to be better. He's the veteran on the secondary unit. There's not that many holes on the Ravens. I know they're 1-2. They lost to the Lions and the Buffalo Bills. I don't think I could have really gone with anybody else, but Ravens fans, you can let me know. The Cincinnati Bengals had just maybe the worst loss of the year over last weekend against the Minnesota Vikings. It's up there. They lost 10-48 in their first full game without Joe Burrow. I'm not going to go with like Jake Browning or any of the receivers. I know the defensive unit wasn't expected to be a good one this year. I'm going to go with their running back, Chase Brown, and maybe it was a little bit of fantasy hype in his game as well, where people thought Brown could be a big breakout. The year 3 running back out of Western Michigan and Illinois was a former 5th round pick that had a very positive end to the 2024 season after we kind of found out that Zach Moss wasn't going to be the guy in Cincy. He's been arguably the worst starting running back in the league to start off this year's season. Through 3 games, 47 attempts, 93 yards. He's averaging 2 yards per attempt, 31 yards per game, and he has 8 catches on 11 targets for 43 yards. If you look at any advanced running back metric as well, when you're looking at like rush expected points added, he is at the bottom of almost every category as well. And maybe this is just kind of unfair to Chase Brown, a former 5th round pick, to be one of the big breakout players, but hey, this is a position where we've seen plenty of day 2 and day 3 guys turn into the best in the NFL at the running back position, and I'm going to go with Chase Brown as the most disappointing Cincinnati Bengals so far. I'm going to go with a duo pick here for the Cleveland Browns. It could be even a trio one, but I'm not going to say that I had high expectations for Joe Flacco this year. I'm going to go with the wide receiver duo of Cedric Tillman and Jerry Jeudy, because the Browns defense has actually been very good. It's why they were able to beat the Packers. It's why they were able to stay in the game against the Cincinnati Bengals and even had an all right first half against the Baltimore Ravens. Jerry Jeudy so far this year in 3 games has 21 targets, 10 catches, 134 yards. Jerry Jeudy's on an expensive contract as well. It's not like he's getting paid top tier money in this week, but it's notable money for this Browns offense. He's currently on a 3-year, $52 million extension that he got back in 2024. And Cedric Tillman had a really exciting 2024 season so far this year. Also just 10 catches for 100 yards. He does have 2 touchdowns on 18 targets. But there's just been more impactful players on that Browns offense, like rookie running back Keyshawn Judkins. Dylan Sampson had a good week 1. David Njoku, Harold Fannin have shown way more this year than Jerry Jeudy and Cedric Tillman, in my opinion. Like I said, the guys that had expectations on the defense, I think, are showing up this season. Maybe Myles Garrett's going to come to the question here now, just because he's the second ranked edge rusher, according to PFF, when he's always supposed to be number 1. He got picked on a ton last night against the Baltimore Ravens. I'm going to go with corner of the Detroit Lions, Terrion Arnold, as their most disappointing player so far. There was some notable corners that were taken after Terrion Arnold in the 2024 draft. Arnold was selected with the 24th pick. You had Nate Wiggins, who's been much better so far in their early young careers. He was selected 6 picks later at number 30. Cooper DeJean went about 15 picks later as well. And so far, Terrion Arnold this year is allowing 130 QBR when targeted. He's already allowed 2 touchdowns and over 230 yards this year. He's been targeted 22 times, allowing 14 catches in those 22 targets. He's graded out as the 92nd corner out of 102 according to PFF. He also just gets so many flags as well, so many pass interferences. We saw one last night that was pivotal for the Baltimore Ravens when he was guarding DeAndre Hopkins, who's like a decade older than him. And yeah, that was a pretty easy one here for the Detroit Lions, given that Arnold was a former first rounder. There's a couple guys you could bring up for the Green Bay Packers, who was pretty much everybody's like new Super Bowl pick this year. People thought they can go undefeated throughout like the first 8 or 9 weeks, and then they lost in week number 3 to the Cleveland Browns. I think the Packers defense has been good this year. Their offense at times, though, has been slightly disappointing. Now, Watson was out for the year. Jaden Reed got hurt in week number 1. Tucker Kraft was kind of banged up going into week number 3. I'm going to say that so far this year, Matthew Golden had a lot of hype to him. Now, I know he's just 3 games into his rookie season, and I think it's also a little bit unfair to Golden as well, just because he was the first wide receiver drafted in the first round to the Packers in forever. But I feel like he's just been used as a gadget guy so far this year. Just 2 targets in week number 1 against Detroit. Same thing against Washington in week number 2. He was targeted more in week number 3 against the Browns, where he had 52 yards on 4 targets. He had a 34-yard catch as well. I'd like to see him more involved going forward. I think Aaron Banks can be brought up here as well, who was a big free agency acquisition, who was a backup rotational interior offensive lineman for the San Francisco 49ers last year. I think he could be better. Xavier McKinney needs to be better as well in the secondary. So I would say maybe it's Aaron Banks, but just because he had so much hype being that first receiver drafted in forever to the Packers, it could be slightly Matthew Golden, but I do think it's unfair since he's a rookie. My next guy is essentially a rookie, and he only played 2 games, but I'm going to go with JJ McCarthy. JJ McCarthy's played 8 quarters of NFL games so far in his career, and outside of one of them, they've all been kind of a disaster. So 7 out of the 8 quarters have been really bad. He obviously had that elite 4th quarter against the Chicago Bears on Monday night in week number 1. He had just a 52% completion percentage in week number 2 against the Atlanta Falcons, and he was picked off twice in that game as well. And I know they were without Christian Darrisaw in those first 2 weeks, and we saw how important Darrisaw is to this Minnesota Vikings offense when we saw how much better it was in week number 3 against the Bengals, although that was Carson Wentz under center. I do think it's still unfair to McCarthy because he's essentially a rookie this season, but with a still solid offensive line, with an offensive-minded head coach in Kevin O'Connell, elite targets around him, I think he could have been a little bit better so far, but hey, he's still young, he's still raw. We'll see if he gets better when he comes back. Might go with like an offensive weapon duo here for the Chicago Bears, DeAndre Swift and DJ Moore. Now, I really didn't have any expectations for DeAndre Swift. I was really shocked when the Bears did not want to add any other playmaker to the running game in the offseason, and they were okay with Swift and Roschon Johnson going into the year, and they took a 7th round flyer on Kyle Monangai from Rutgers, who may essentially be the starting running back for the team at the end of the year. Hey, we may even see DJ Moore be the most impactful running back for this team at the end of the year. We saw him get involved in the running game a little bit more in week number 3 against the Cowboys. But DJ Moore is essentially the wide receiver 1 on this team. At least he's getting paid like that. He's been there the longest, more than Rome Odunze, who's looked better than him this year, or even Luther Burden, who you can make an argument has looked better than DJ Moore as well. He has 16 targets, 12 catches, 135 yards, and a touchdown this year. I just think even with this passing offense going and not looking bad whatsoever in Caleb's second year, Ben Johnson's first year, DJ Moore could definitely be better. I know they're 2-1, but there's been a lot of disappointing players at the Jacksonville Jaguars so far. You could bring up Trevor Lawrence, who you'd like to see be a little bit better so far this year. You could even mention Travis Hunter, who they traded away their 1st round pick in 2026 for to move up to get him to play him on both sides of the ball, but he hasn't really been impactful on either side, more so the offensive side. I'm going to go with Brian Thomas Jr. though, because this has been a weird start so far with just Brian Thomas's best numbers as a rookie coming with Mac Jones under center, not Trevor Lawrence. And it does feel like there is no chemistry out there between the two. I know that there's been some bad balls from Trevor Lawrence over the middle of the field to Brian Thomas Jr., but he's also had some bad drops this year. He's currently tied for the league lead in drops as well. And out of all those guys, he has the most targets. Brian Thomas was elite last year. He was kind of rivaling Malik Neighbors as the best rookie receiver last year, and Ladd McConkey as well. So far this year, he has 25 targets across 3 games, which is good, but 7 catches, 115 yards, averaging just 4.6 yards per target, and has a 28% success rate as a receiver this year on his targets. Last year, it was at 55%. It's got to go up from here, right? Brian Thomas Jr. is way too talented for him to be this bad, but he's definitely been disappointing, and I wonder how kind of weird those vibes are in Jacksonville, although they are 2-1. For the Houston Texans, you gotta go with CJ Stroud. They're 0-3 to start off this season, losing to the Jaguars last weekend in a winnable game. They also lost to the Rams and the Bucks this year as well. CJ Stroud, man, his numbers have not looked great since his rookie year whatsoever. Last year, it was the sophomore slump for Stroud. The touchdowns went down, the interceptions went up, the yards even went down in 2 more games. So far this year, CJ Stroud, with his 0-3 record, 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 599 yards, just completing 64% of his passes, averaging less than 200 yards per game. And they switched offensive coordinators in the offseason. Bobby Slovic is no longer there, but this team and the front office also decided to not invest in the offensive line whatsoever. They traded their best offensive lineman, Laramie Tunzel, to the Washington Commanders, and now CJ Stroud has no time to throw. You drafted Ariante Urser in the 2nd round, but that is so much pressure for a rookie offensive lineman. And Stroud, who was once maybe a top 10 quarterback going into his sophomore year, probably is in a top 20 quarterback right now. And his numbers over his last 15 games are kind of similar to Anthony Richardson's first 15 games as well. I don't know what's going on in Houston, but this does not look like the same CJ Stroud we saw win Offensive Rookie of the Year back in 2023. So for the Indianapolis Colts, this is a team that's 3-0, and you can't say anybody's been disappointing on the offensive side of the ball because Daniel Jones is looking like an MVP candidate. Jonathan Taylor is looking like he can win Offensive Player of the Year. The wide receivers have stepped up with Daniel Jones. The offensive line has stepped up this year as well. Anybody with solid expectations in the secondary like Javarius Ward, Kenny Moore, Cameron Bynum have all been great this year. So I'm just going to go with Kwity Paye because Paye is currently graded out as the 88th best edge rusher according to PFF. He was a 1st-round pick back in the 2021 draft in a loaded 2021 edge class. He's been a full-time starter for the Colts this year, and so far he's just 5th in tackles for loss on the team, 5th in stops, 5th in pass rushes, and then just 5th in QB hits as well. He just needs to be better for a former 1st-round pick, but like I said, for the Colts, you're kind of splitting hairs just because everybody has been exceeding expectations in Indy. For the Tennessee Titans, I mean, you could say Brian Callahan, but maybe you had just really low expectations. I'm going to go with Calvin Ridley. It's been a disaster for him as the wide receiver 1 in Tennessee. Now, I can give Ridley a little bit of a pass. Last year with Will Levis, that offense was just all over the place, and they were the worst team in the NFL, hence they got the #1 overall pick. Ridley, though, is 30 years old. He signed a 4-year, $92 million contract with $50 million guaranteed in the 2024 offseason. There is a possibility they may cut him after this season. He has just been non-existent so far for the Tennessee Titans. He's currently tied with Brian Thomas Jr. and CeeDee Lamb, leading the NFL in drops so far for somebody that signed a $92 million contract. Having just 8 catches for 111 yards and 21 targets is doing your #1 overall pick quarterback no favors at all. Maybe it's just the offensive system there in Tennessee. So Titans fans, you can let me know if you agree. Would you have picked Calvin Ridley as well? So I mentioned before when I was talking about Tua that we were going to have to talk about another lefty quarterback. We're going to talk about Michael Penix of the Atlanta Falcons. So Penix had more experience going into this year than JJ McCarthy did. He played a little bit at the end of the 2024 season in 5 games. He looked solid. He didn't look great. He didn't look bad. He was a rookie quarterback, but he was an older quarterback as well. Penix is 25 years old, and it's been a disaster so far this year for the Falcons. Zach Robinson is not trusting Penix whatsoever with good weapons, with improved O-line play, with Chris Lindstrom holding down that unit. So far this year, he's thrown 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, just a 58% completion percentage, 605 yards in those 3 games. They lost 30-0 against the Panthers. They lost 30-0 against the Panthers. They could not score on the horrible Panthers defense. It was just an abysmal day. That offense is not going whatsoever, and they had to bench Penix in his 3rd game as the full-time starter. starter for Kirk Cousins. He's up there as one of the more disappointing quarterbacks this year. We've talked about Stroud. We've talked about Tua. I brought up JJ McCarthy and Trevor Lawrence. But man, Falcons fans just got to feel like deja vu now. They think they're watching Desmond Ridder out there. The 2024 NFL Draft had so many good wide receivers selected in the first 2 rounds, right? We've talked about Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr., Marvin Harrison really hasn't worked out too much, but you have Ladd McConkey in the mix, you have Ricky Pearsall in the mix, Keon Coleman. Well, the Panthers traded up to get the 32nd overall pick, and they ended up taking Xavier Legette, who I think has been one of the more disappointing Panthers so far this season. You could talk about Bryce Young yet again. I don't think he's looked like the franchise guy so far this year, but Legette in his first game against Jacksonville, 7 targets, 3 catches, 10 yards, and then in week number 2 against Arizona with a banged up secondary, 8 targets, 1 catch, -2 yards. Yep, that's all he did in week number 2. He was out in week number 3. I'm way more invested, obviously, in Ted McMillan as the wide receiver 1 in Carolina. And even when Jalen Coker comes back, I'm more intrigued about him in Carolina as well. And I'm starting to think that Legette is maybe not going to work out long term. Maybe I'm getting deja vu. I think I'm watching Jonathan Mingo out there for Bryce Young again. So yeah, I'm going to go with Legette, who was a first rounder just back in the 2024 draft. So for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you could bring up Vita Vea. I don't really want to say like anybody on that offensive line because the unit has been depleted. I mean, I may be being a little hypocritical here going with Bucky Irving, but Bucky, I don't know, man. I was just such a big Bucky Irving fan going to this year. I still think he's going to be great here in 2025, but you could say he's been slightly disappointing this year. He's not been a good pass blocker whatsoever. He's actually graded out as one of the worst pass blocking running backs in the league so far this year. He averaged 2.6 yards per attempt in week number 1 against Atlanta. 4.2, a little bit better against Houston in week number 2, and then 2.6 against the Jets in week number 3. He is yet to score a rushing touchdown this year. He does have 1 receiving touchdown. His advanced running metrics have not been great. Like I said, you could just fault that on the offensive line, which is just absolutely depleted. So maybe you could just end up going with Vita Vea, who's been a below average interior defensive lineman this season. Also for the Saints, I didn't really have expectations for Spencer Rattler or this offensive unit whatsoever going into the year. So I'm going to go with just Kool-Aid McKinstry on the defensive side of the field that had an encouraging end to his rookie season. This year, though, he's been graded out as one of the worst coverage corners in the league so far. He's given up 2 touchdowns this year, over 155 yards, and quarterbacks have 147 QBR when targeting Kool-Aid McKinstry in the secondary. I still think he's going to be a really good player in this league, and there's not a lot of Saints that I had high expectations and really cared about going into this year. You could say Carl Granderson could be a little bit better, but yeah, this is a team that's going to be fighting for the number 1 overall pick. They may just honestly keep Garrett Nussmeier in Louisiana, and he'll be starting for the Saints in week 1. We'll see if they give Tyler Shuck an opportunity at all this year either. Such an easy one here for the Kansas City Chiefs. I'm going to go with Isaiah Pacheco. Now, the whole offensive unit has been disappointing. You could make an argument for Travis Kelce, and I'd be okay with that, but Travis Kelce is also 36 years old. I kind of knew that we were going to see an eventual drop-off for him, and we're seeing that. Pacheco now has had a little bit of time since recovering from his major injury last year. He's been arguably the worst running back, maybe the worst starting running back in the league this year, up there with Chase Brown. 25 attempts through 3 games, 92 yards. He's gotten just 4 first downs. He doesn't have a touchdown. He's averaging 3.7 yards per attempt, and he had maybe the worst play of the year so far against the Giants, where he was running backwards with his hips turned to the opposite end zone, and they had to throw a backwards pass, and luckily Patrick Mahomes was able to rip it out of Bobby Okereke's hands. But Pacheco has just got nothing going whatsoever. Now, I know Juwan Taylor isn't good on the offensive line. Josh Simmons is a rookie out there. They traded away Joe Thuney, but man, I trust Kareem Hunt out there way more. I'd like to actually see this team go out and maybe trade for a running back this year. For the Chargers, you're splitting hairs here like the Indianapolis Colts. Everybody's kind of done well so far this year. I'm just going to say Ladd McConkey, maybe in more so terms of fantasy output, just because Quinn Johnston has been targeted more this year and has performed better. Keenan Allen has performed just as good, if not better, than Ladd McConkey this year. McConkey was up there with Brian Thomas Jr. and Malik Neighbors as the wide receiver 1 in the loaded 2024 wide receiver class. So far this year, throughout 3 games, he's just got 21 targets, 15 catches, 163 yards. He doesn't have a receiving touchdown either this year. You could also say Mekhi Becton, who they signed in the offseason, has been disappointing for this interior offensive line. I mean, it sucked that they lost Rashawn Slater before the season started. Cam Hart could be a little bit better. Khalil Mack could be a little bit better as well. But honestly, vibes are so high in Los Angeles for the Chargers Chargers, yeah, like I said, you're just splitting hairs at this point. For the Denver Broncos, there's been some disappointing players on the defensive side of the field. Patrick Surtain does not look like the reigning decoy. Brandon Jones has been inconsistent. Riley Moss has been inconsistent as well. Same with Zach Allen and John Franklin Myers, but maybe I'm just going to go with Bo Nix, who's actually graded as the worst quarterback in the league this year for all qualifiers, according to PFF. And I was a little bit scared about Bo Nix going into last year. He exceeded expectations. A lot of people thought Denver could maybe be a team that could rival some of the top AFC teams to be a surprising Super Bowl pick this year. So far in 3 games, 1-2 record, not looking great against Tennessee, losing on a game-winning field goal against the Colts, and lost to the Chargers by 3 in week number 3. Nix has a 64% completion percentage, 5 touchdowns, 3 interceptions this year. And I just feel like this offense hasn't gotten going yet. So yeah, you could go with just maybe that whole Denver Broncos defense has been disappointing, or Bo Nix. And for the Raiders, I kind of just want to go with their offense as a whole as well. I'm not going to go with Eshigenti, right? Because he's a rookie through 3 games. He's going to be fine. And when you're watching the film, the Raiders offensive line has been so bad this year. Dylan Parham's been really bad. Alex Kapp has been really bad. Jackson Powers-Johnson has been inconsistent so far this year. The only good offensive lineman has pretty much been Colton Miller, who was the best guy going into the year. Brock Bowers looks like he's playing hurt right now. So I'm just going to go with Geno Smith. And like I said, maybe just the overall offensive line unit so far for the Raiders. Their offense was just so bad in week number 2 against the Chargers. Geno threw for 180 yards and 3 interceptions. He looked better individually against the Commanders, but the team as a whole just got blown out by 17 points. It was never really a close game. It's definitely been a disappointing start for the Raiders, and this season could look even worse if they lost that close game to New England in week number 1. I also kind of struggled here for the San Francisco 49ers because I don't want to go with any of the rookies that have shown flashes so far this season. A lot of guys have just been banged up there in San Francisco. Like, could I just say the injury gods is the most disappointing thing for San Francisco? Nick Bosa tore his ACL. George Kittle got hurt already. Brock Purdy got hurt already. Malik Mustafa was on the pup to start off this year. So I'm just going to say injuries, just the biggest disappointment in San Francisco so far. Easy one here in Arizona as well. You could go with Drew Petzing, the offensive coordinator. I'm going with Marvin Harrison Jr. though. This guy was drafted with the 4th overall pick back in the 2024 draft. And so many receivers in that class have looked better. He had a disappointing year number 1. I thought he was just going to walk into the league and have 1,000 yards in his sleep. No, he had 885 as a rookie this year through 3 games. 10 catches on 17 targets, 142 yards, 1 touchdown. He had one of the worst drops I've seen all year in week number 3 against the San Francisco 49ers. Maybe he's in his own head right now. Maybe it's just a mental game. He needs to be better in stepping up as the wide receiver 1 for Kyler and this Cardinals offense going forward, because so far in his very young and short career, he's going to have a long one, I still think. It's been disappointing so far, to say the least. I'm going to go with Tariq Woolen as the most disappointing Seattle Seahawks so far. Another team that's had very good vibes, winning against the Steelers in week number 2, blowing out the Saints in week number 3. Woolen is the 99th graded corner out of 102 according to PFF this year. He's allowing 129 QBR when targeted. He's allowed a touchdown this year, over 120 yards. Now they're going to get Witherspoon and Nick Emenwari like fully healthy going forward now, so maybe Woolen will look a little bit better. But he was so good as a rookie. I feel like we've been going backwards ever since, but he could still be a good corner in this league. He could be better than what we're seeing right now, and the Seahawks could maybe turn into like one of the better defensive units under Mike McDonald in the league. And the LA Rams, I don't really want to go with anybody on this offensive unit. Stafford's looked great. Devontae Adams has looked great. Kyle Puka's been good. Kyron Williams has been solid. So maybe just go with the safety play in their secondary right now with Cam Kitchens and Cameron Curl. Still a semi-young safety duo between those two, where it did not look good for the Rams in the second half against the Philadelphia Eagles. Maybe Kobe Turner has been slightly disappointing as well, but I think you're splitting hairs for the most disappointing Ram so far this season. But Rams fans, you can let me know down below. And that is going to be for me. I hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, I would appreciate you dropping a thumbs up. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. What I said, do you agree, disagree, or if there's anybody that I didn't mention, let me know down below. Subscribe for more NFL videos like this throughout the season and off season long. Catch you guys in the next one. Peace.